Welcome to another moment with yourself with Linda Ty. This week I thought I'd start off by sharing a little bit about an aspect of the freeze response and the fight and flight response that I think is not discussed so much. Yeah. And last week I actually mentioned being stuck between our needs and our fears, stuck between our need for connection and our fear for our own safety. And in a similar way, we can get stuck between our need for connection as well as our need to run away or our need to fight back or our need to assert our boundaries. And this can get somaticized in the body. In sensory-motor psychotherapy, we call that a nourishment barrier, where there's a physical layer of viscera where I stop anything negative from the outside getting in. Yeah. Because there may be an environment that's chaotic or toxic or disappointing. And yet this nourishment barrier also stops the pleasurable stuff from getting in as well. So we actually don't nourish ourselves. We can't let in the goodness about ourselves or about the world around us. And I know that some of you are visual learners, so I thought I'd share with you, actually, I'll show you the book. This is Stanley Kellerman, Emotional Anatomy. And Stanley Kellerman is a colleague of Thomas Myers, who's a myofascial specialist and a Rolfer who trained under Ida Rolf. And Stanley is his colleague. And this book it's wonderful. And I actually discovered that book during my years as a yoga teacher. And the image from the book that I wanted to share with you, which I believe really illustrates the somaticized freeze response, the nourishment barrier, is the ways in which our inner body may not match our outer body due to the experiences that we've had in life. And so for some of us, we may have a collapsed inner body or a rigid inner body or a swollen inner body. And then we develop an outer body as a way of protecting ourselves or getting our needs met as we move through the world. And I think this adds a layer of nuance to our conversation, that freeze can be a freeze response for in the moment, but it can also be a conditioned response, which then becomes a part of our procedural habits, our conditioned responses as we move through the world. And what I found really profound during my yoga teaching years as I taught yoga, the style of yoga I taught wasn't a Simon Says yoga class. It was a set sequence of poses that students were invited to learn and to memorize. And so students would just turn up to class whenever they felt like it, roll out their mats and just do their practice. And so for me as an instructor, it became not about looking at poses or looking at what you're not doing right in that particular shape. It actually became about noticing patterns in your body, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. And then the students were invited to become more self-aware in terms of the patterns in their bodies. Yeah? And it allowed for the capacity to teach as well as the capacity to learn self-awareness. And what I saw through my instruction was there was a mismatch between the inner body and the outer body, and the breath could actually help to bridge the gap between the two. Yeah. So today we will look at anger. So part of the fight response, and yet anger can be so incredibly tricky. And I'll tell you why. Yeah, anger for some of us can be part of that sympathetic arousal. Yeah, it's survival response. So if we go back to the ventral vagal ladder, for some of us, it's mobilizing into active defense, the fight response. Yeah. But for some of us, anger is what keeps life force energy in the nervous system. And our anger is what actually keeps us from going into despair, hopelessness, helplessness, and shutdown. Mm-hmm. And for some of us, it may be a combination of both as well. And I just want to point that out because, as always, there's nuance in the conversation. And what I think is actually really interesting is for many of us, actually, let me take a step back. There's a researcher, Riley, 1992, he looked at communication patterns in dysfunctional families where there was addiction and substance abuse. And he saw that there were patterns, interactive patterns that these families were experiencing. And there were two patterns in particular, one homeostatic collusion, and the second one is impaired mourning. Yeah, impaired mourning. And so this is that aspect of grief where it's potentially traumatic grief. So this impaired mourning can easily be confused with, or may perhaps go in alongside, this dorsal vagal response. And so the anger keeps us up here, and yet when we work through the anger, what's underneath is sadness. And for some of us, we haven't had the co-regulation for our sadness to be held. And so we then can confuse sadness with the despair, collapse, hopelessness and helplessness of the dorsal vagal response. Yeah. And so I just share that with you because it may help to bring some nuance to your own process, as well as what you bring to the people in your life. I think it's really common in our society to, don't be sad. Why are you sad? And, we can't be mad either. And so for some of us, we confuse getting mad with, when we feel sad, we get mad. And for some of us, we're mad, but we're actually sad underneath, or the other way around. So let's see here. For today, in terms of working through anger, let us work with the anger that is the mobilizing response. Yeah, so up here. Let's let this go for now. You can be cognizant, but let's work with the anger that steps us down the ladder. I was raised in Australia. We call that the irrits. Right, we're getting irritable, the irrits. So when you notice the irrits rising, what happens for you? And this is where it might be, it's that mindful intention of noticing as anger arises or as the irrits arise, what happens in your body? I'll share with you what happens in my body. I do a little bit of this. Yeah, so for me, it's the nostrils flaring, it's the jaw getting tense and tight, my head comes forward and my eyes start to narrow in and my shoulders actually start to round. Yeah, as a way of, one, mobilizing my shoulders and arms, and secondly, as a way of protecting here. My core draws in and my breath is into my upper torso. And knowing this for me allows me some way in terms of intervening for myself. And the first few classes of this series, we've looked at ways to release tension in the eyes and the jaw and the scalp. Yeah. And in this session, we'll unpack some more possibilities for you. So let's start with reaching your arms in the air. Yeah. And waving your hands around. And this is always my first go-to. Because typically what happens, and you can release your arms down now, is we take a few breaths and the navel comes forward and down, right? So that thing where we mobilize through the core and send the breath up here and we puffer, that can then relax and let go, yeah? Another breath-related, so this is releasing tension in the diaphragm. Another breath-related technique to reduce the irrits is to do the double inhale. So what happens when we mobilize is, yeah, my nostrils flare to get more breath in, or perhaps I actually mouth breathe in, but that can be more of a fright collapse response. And for those of us who are more fighters, we do the flared nostrils breath in. And so this is where I invite you to notice when you do that and do the double inhale. So, and then the slow exhale, whether it's out the mouth or out the nose. Let's practice that again. Flare the nostrils, short inhale, followed up with the long second inhale. And then exhale, 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 exhale. Take a natural breath and then we can practice that one more time. And whenever you're ready, you can flare your nostrils and take the short, sharp breath in. And then the double inhale. And then slowly exhale. Next week, we'll look at the voice and vocalization. Some of you may notice with the exhale, there's a hum or a sigh or a perhaps a low growl that gets released. And that's okay. Something that tends to happen for those of us who have this mobilizing response is we have a lot of tension here. Yeah. And, you know, the shoulders can start to round in. And so what you can do is you can grab a ball and you can rub it along this area here. Yeah. And what I tend to do as well when I'm in the office and I have the fortune of a little bit of time is I actually press myself up against the wall. And so I let my body lean into the wall and then I roll the ball just underneath the collarbone right here. And that just helps to open up the muscles here that have learned just procedurally to automatically round forward to mobilize for active defense. We did some jaw stuff last week. Oh, where'd my mouth guard go? Here it is. Okay. So some of us get the irrits and it expresses as jaw tension. And I find oftentimes when I've got emails to write that aren't so pleasant to write, I notice myself, right, getting this tension here. So what I do is I pop my mouth guard in and I actually slow down. I slow down the breath in, and as I breathe in, I actually squeeze the jaw against my mouth guard. And I do it with intention rather than letting this be a subconscious pattern of my body. And this connects through the throat. Sorry, the trigeminal nerve connects to the, I'm sorry, I don't know my nerve names, but the nerves that connect through to the throat, as well as the heart and the diaphragm. And so there is this, in the slowing down, a pleasurableness that happens when we slow down the of the jaw. And I get through my less pleasant emails in a way that doesn't add that wear and tear into my nervous system. Now, here's something for you. Carrots and any sort of hard cracker. And it's this intentionality that we bring to the chewing response that can release this tension here. Excuse me. As Stone Age children, we used to masticate our food for 4 hours a day. So that's the rest and digest response. And when we chew our food, we actually chew on one side and then the other side, and then one side and then the other side. And so this can be a way of, one, releasing that tension, but secondly, a way of keeping us in the parasympathetic nervous system. Chewing gum's a good way, except I find that we tend to do it mindlessly. And so the invitation is to do it mindfully, with the chewing response. The fight response also gets our hands, right, to want to clench, to want to claw, to want to push back or push back. And so this is where I love the use of squeezies. And so I invite you to play with the ones that offer the right amount of resistance for you. Last week we looked at the squeezing and releasing, but you can also have squeeze balls. And in lieu of squeeze balls, you can also grab your favorite stuffy. And just squeeze and release. I notice for a lot of my clients, they actually like to push the stuffy into the sternum and squeeze as they push in and then slowly release. Beyond this, let's see, let's have a look at some of this push response. Now, what I want to let you know is we're going to do some pushing and some of that implosion, explosion type stuff. And for some of us, this will actually, what it does is it activates the sympathetic nervous system, right? So we're actually going to experience the heart rate going up. We're going to experience a bit of sweat underneath the armpits, perhaps some heat rising. And for some of you, that may be like uncomfortable in an unpleasant way that trips you into dorsal vagal. And I just want to note that this might not be okay for you, right? And that's okay. We'll do it slowly and then you can choose when to back off. So find yourself a wall. And make your hands nice and big and begin to pedal your heels into the ground. And you're bending one knee at a time. And I invite you to connect to each of the pads at the end of your fingertips, as well as the heel of your hands. And to push against the wall. And to then connect the upper body to the lower body. If you can, breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Perhaps engaging through the core, the pelvic floor. Rolling your shoulders away from your ears. So instead of using the neck muscles, you're actually engaging through the side back muscles here. And perhaps you may like to let your head relax and release. Perhaps with the exhale, there may be a sigh or a low growl. Or a low-pitched hum. Or perhaps it's simply an audible exhale through the nose. And then slowly bring yourself back up to standing. And then have a seat. And check in. Slow breath in through the nose and out through the nose. So it takes the nervous system about 40 to 60 seconds to catch up. Yeah? So this is where we maintain the breath. And notice if there was a shift for us. Another activity to experiment with is opposite hand to opposite knee, and then to press your elbows to the inside of your thighs. And you use your thighs to press into your elbows, and you use your hands to press against the inside of the knees. And then if you like, you can squeeze through the pelvic floor. Shoulders away from ears. Engage your lats, which are the side back muscles of the upper torso. Breath in through the nose. You can let the nostrils flare if you like, and then do the double inhale. And then slow exhale. Flared nostrils, breath in, squeeze the thighs inwards. Take the double inhale, squeeze and push back with the hands. And then slowly exhale, releasing, letting go of tension. You can try one more. Flare nostrils, breathe in Squeeze in with the thighs, take the double inhale, push back with the hands, squeeze the pelvic floor, and then exhale. Bring the torso up, slow breath in, into the low belly, slow exhale. Breathe in. Slow exhale. Breath in. And slow exhale. Continue to allow the breath to fill the low belly as you move through the rest of your day. Next week, we will look at the truncated attachment cry. So the vocalization that then becomes stifled when we learn to not cry out for help. In the meantime, be well, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.